I'm Sir Flowbojan Thunderhammer.
And I'm Teflon Frosthammer.
And I'm Cabbage Tidehammer.
And this
is
WAK.
If Amtgard knighthood means anything, you can't knife a motherfucker and keep it.
And the thing that people need to understand essentially about arts and sciences events is that your scores don't matter.
Do you want a black phoenix or a white phoenix?
Jeez, language, man. We're on
right.
a freaking podcast, for fuck's sake.
Mind-blowing experience, right?
Hello, everyone, and welcome to WAK, where we discuss topics important to the Amtgard community at large and talk with interesting people from around the foam fighting world. You may notice... Did I nail that?
I guess you did.
Fuck yeah! All right. Suck it, Flo! You may notice that Flo is not here today. He has some business going on, so he will be out. So today it's just Teflon and I, and we're continuing on with our What the Hell Even Is Amtgard Anyway series. Now, I said before at the top of each episode we would do corrections, so I do have one of those. Let's get to that. If I was prepared, I would have had this pulled up already.
Oh, yeah, but, you know, what kind of podcast are we?
Listen, we're doing this in my office at like 6 p.m., and it has to go up tonight. I'm hanging in there.
Yeah.
All right, let's see.
Ooh. Oh, did we get another one?
Oh, we just got a new subscriber, and they had a comment that I thought was
that's cool.
We'll read that off.
What's that comment?
No, I'll read it off. I don't want this to be like we read audience questions or whatever. So Seth Reel from Our Own Kingdom says, Amtgard is not actually a lightest touch game. We occupy a weird middle ground between lightest touch games, like most latex event LARPs, and sufficient force games like Dag and Bell. We don't have a minimum or maximum force you're supposed to use when fighting, so we can swing just as hard and fast as a Dag player and not get kicked out of the event, and still have all of our shots taken. Same if it was swinging like it was a lightest touch latex LARP. They also go on to say that lightest touch combat runs dramatically different from Amtgard combat and can run differently in every lightest touch game depending on how much emphasis they put on sword fighting and how much they put on other less physical abilities. So Amtgard, weird middle ground, good to know. Where did we leave off last time?
I believe we left off at what the dream was.
So we talked about the dream, and there's a million different versions of the dream, as many as there are Amtgarders. So that literally was only point 1 in our outline. Is that right? Yeah, it looks like it. Okay. So then today we'll be covering, and this is a very broad, how does it work? That's going to include social structure and hierarchy, combat, and then a miscellaneous section, which is basically going to be me going, did we miss anything? And hopefully somebody will fill in there.
Oh man, it's only me.
Yeah, it's you and then the audience, whoever wants to comment in there. There's my fiance Baronay Vidalia in the background. We don't have a third mic.
She can come steal mine, I guess, if she really gets whiny about it.
Yeah, it's fine. And you'll see the cats, our traditional guest hosts, Brad and Mao fighting.
Drive-by fight there.
Yeah, exactly. So before we jump in, we actually just went to a knighting. And it's kind of appropriate. We actually are going to talk about knightings today. But we got to see our belt.
Our Grand Knight? Whatever. Grand
Knight?
I don't know. It sounds real bad. Yeah, doesn't it?
It's a Grand Knight. He's okay.
He does have a walker, so.
Sir Stinkfoot now.
Yeah.
He got his third belt, which was his
Flame belt. Yeah.
What was the order those came in? It was Serpent, Crown Flame, or Crown Flame Serpent?
I don't actually know.
Well, maybe we'll have him on one day.
Guess would be Serpent Crown Flame, but I don't know for sure.
Okay. Maybe we'll have him on one day. It was a really cool thing. It was like a day event. I kind of like knightings as day events. I don't know.
I actually kind of like it a lot too, to be honest. One of the things like with awards, I'll get to that later. We'll keep moving on.
Fair, yeah. But huge shout out to Falling Fire and to Neverwinter for putting that on. Mm-hmm. That was really cool. So with that out of the way, let me give my disclaimer that I always do. And it looks like in this, we're going to say 6-episode series, we're going to be answering the question, what the hell even is that game that you're always talking about? We're aiming to be as detailed as we can, but we're bound to miss a few things along the way. We'll post documentation where we can, and we'll try to point to other useful resources when we don't have all the answers. Audience corrections will be addressed at the top of each episode. And with that, we're going to get into how does it work. So social structure and hierarchy. This is sort of the unspoken part of Amtgard a lot of times. There's a bit on it in the rulebook. But there's far more on classes and combat and everything else. The rest of it is something you kind of have to feel out. So the first thing I wanted to get into, for a new person showing up at Amtgard, what are they walking into? In most cases, it's a shire or a barony, something like that. But there's a couple of different things there, and they all scale depending on how many members there are. So it goes, if I'm not mistaken, shire, barony. Does it go straight to duchy?
Yeah.
There's no middle step for barony to duchy because it's a big...
Unless there's a kingdom-specific one, I don't think so, because I think it is shire, barony, duchy. Grand Duchy sort of exists, but
areas.
Not really at the same time, and then kingdom.
So all of those scale depending on how many players you actually have. So from, well, I guess we'll say 2 to 15 players, or 2 to 14 players, you have a shire.
This one is, again, kind of a varies kingdom. Merrick, I don't remember if we ever posted it, but Merrick had a breakdown on, I think, every kingdom for population size and things like that too. It's really clever, so that may be one I can find if you don't already have it.
Well, Merrick, I know you listen to the show sometimes. Paragon Path podcast, by the way, go give it a listen. It's great.
It's good.
He will at some point post his grand unified corpora, maybe.
Oh man, that would be amazing.
I just want one corpora.
So bad.
So we're actually touching on a lot of the things that get to be important here. So all of those different units and their size is what differentiates them. It can be a different size depending on where you're from, and that's a more geographical location called a kingdom. So we have, how many kingdoms now? 23, 24, something like that.
I can't remember.
20-something kingdoms occupying most of the United States. Actually, all of the United States, parts of Canada, and even Mexico. Is there like a little bit of a dip?
I don't know if the international parks are still active. I know at one point we had Croatia.
Yeah, there was one in Croatia. That's what I was blanking.
But I don't think it is active anymore.
It's fair. They're kind of separated. It's hard to keep things going.
Well, they're competing with the Euro-style LARPs and stuff like that, which...
That's true.
The Ameritrash LARPs, as some would call them, don't really translate outside of the U.S. So.
Okay. We actually have a bit, and this is going to come later, but put that in the outline for the Eurotrash versus Ameritrash LARPs, because I do want to talk about that.
Sure.
So, yeah. Whenever you step into Amtgard, if you see people fighting at your local park, or maybe you just saw them and they sent you this to listen to, that's going to be your shire, your barony, your duchy, wherever you're locally participating. The larger entity that you are a part of is your kingdom. I can give you some examples here in Winter's Edge. We have all of Tennessee, parts of parts of South Carolina, Georgia, Alabama. We have Mississippi.
Mississippi, yeah.
Yeah, and there's like one more. Is it another one of the Carolinas? I think we even go up into Kentucky, but we sort of butt heads with Rising Winds there.
I think Winter's Crest might technically be Kentucky. I don't remember for sure. Okay. I'm really bad at our kingdom's geography, let alone anyone else's.
There is actually a really cool map that I will try to post up. I will try to put it in the comments so you can see. But you can determine, okay, I live in this state and I live on the East Coast, so that means, my kingdom is this. The kingdoms do not maybe war like you would think they would.
Yeah, not over land necessarily.
No.
There are some rules to it through AI, but it's very lax.
Yeah. And so actually, perfect segue. You said the thing I was hoping you would say. AI. That's the next and the highest tier. Amtgard International. Now, they don't control any particular group. They were run out of the Burning Lands, but I don't think that's
not a thing anymore.
Yeah, so the Burning Lands being a different kingdom, and the first kingdom, Amtgard International is the board of directors that oversees the development and I don't know what else of the entire game.
The rules and stuff itself, I guess, is a good way to look at it.
Yeah, so Amtgard International Board of Directors handles our copyright and things like that. You won't interact with them in a gameplay sense, but you may hear that thrown around a lot. So when people are talking about AI, it's usually administrative in some way. Mm-hmm. So from local park, which is your barony, shire, duchy, to your kingdom, and then to Amtgard International. The kingdoms, we touched on this. They don't fight. They don't war. There's no disputes over land.
Mostly.
There are a few areas where one kingdom sniped a park from another state that wasn't technically their territory. There's a lot of stuff that can get pretty nuanced. You would probably want to talk to somebody in your kingdom to know more about that, because those can get really nuanced. Mm-hmm. But yeah, in general, that's the structure that you're working with. So from a geographical standpoint, that's what you have. You may also see, as you're playing, a bunch of different colored belts. Yep. And actually, Teflon, vamp on that. I have some examples over here. I'll just pull down.
So, is that really where we want to go with that? right now.
Well, there's
Kingdoms,
social...
parks, membership. So membership would be free. Free for just playing, right? Like you can go to a park, you can have 0 gear, show up in jeans and a t-shirt or something like that, and you are free to play pretty much forever. Some parks kind of push you to get your own gear and stuff, which is a good thing in my opinion. So that way you're not just being detrimental to the loaner gear and stuff like that, but it is not something you need to focus on when you are new. Your park will help you out with it, no matter what size they are. The greater membership, in a way, where Winter's Edge calls it citizenship, right? And then Polaris has it as, what was it, the members in good standing, the mixed system. Which is where you are dues paid, which means you can participate in all things. And depending on some of the kingdoms, you have to be dues paid to be able to put an all thing proposal in and things like that. I guess a quick burn down. All things is what you do to vote on things that affect your kingdom.
Right. So I might say, hey, it's too hard to run for this particular office. I have
Let's
to
get
win
rid
a
of
tournament.
quals.
Yeah. You're welcome. So I might be like, hey, I have to fight in a tournament to do this administrative position. Why? That's dumb. Let's vote to change that. And that's what you would do an all thing for. And your kingdom's going to do that pretty regularly. This is another thing we didn't touch on with kingdoms, actually. Every kingdom has its own corpora, which is the governing document that decides all of the minutiae of how that kingdom's going to work. So when its big events are held, how often you're going to do those all things, when
kind of
elections happen.
the administrative rules of the kingdom, and kind of sometimes expectations of things that are going on inside that kingdom. I don't want to get into the weeds too much on that. That is totally a different thing to dive down.
I'll leave it at this. A lot of the changes look relatively minor from one kingdom to the next, but they end up making huge cultural differences.
Oh, absolutely.
Just the difference in, citizenship between one kingdom to the next might impact who gets the vote, and that's huge. Mm-hmm. So let's actually talk about, so there's member, citizen, that kind of thing. What are you, as a newbie player, just showing up at your first time? You are just a member, right? You've signed in maybe once.
Yeah, the terminology may be slightly different, but like from kingdom to kingdom, but you're just a player or a member or something like that, yeah.
So one of the first things you might start to see, do we want to put belts off for a little bit?
Let's put that with the rest of like awards and titles and stuff.
Okay, well then what do you want to jump to next? Because I was going to do households and fighting companies.
Yeah, I think that's a good one to jump to, because we're kind of going down from kingdom to smaller things and then microcosms and then
individuals.
Stuff.
I got you. I should have workshopped the outline beforehand, but
hey, workshopping on the air is our kind of thing.
Yeah, we're building this plane as we fly it. So households and fighting companies, I should say, they kind of go into the same bucket. You'll often see people at that park wearing the same colors. They're not part of it. Well, I guess they're kind of part of a gang, but like a really dorky gang.
Yeah, kind of.
So you may see
was it West Side Story kind of thing?
Yeah, some not even that cool. But you'll see matching garb. Usually they'll have matching symbols, that kind of thing. Those can be either households or fighting companies. They're essentially the same thing, but with different goals.
More or less, yeah. Like they've blended, I think, as the years kind of go on, because there's been fighting households to fighting companies, but typically the big difference is that fighting companies, you can only have membership to one, whereas households, that is not a hard and fast rule by any means. There are exclusive households for things, but most of them really aren't.
Yeah, and we've talked about a few households on the podcast. The most immediate one is House Lioness, who is dedicated to combating apathy in Amtgard, I think is their official slogan.
No, Lioness is the women's thing. The combating apathy is... Oh, what is that one?
I swear I thought that was Lioness.
No, that's definitely the women's fighting community kind of thing.
Okay, yeah. House Lioness is promoting female fighters in Amtgard. Damn it, what's the other one? Well, if one of our listeners knows,
man, I can't remember it
drop
either.
It in the comments. Anyway, there are different households, and they'll have different goals. Some, for example, are service households. The Lantern Corps here in Winter's Edge, I know, is one we've talked about. And their whole thing was, they had different corps, but
I mean, it branched as the household grew. Originally, it was to
service. You guys were always
do service, so it'd be like kitchen, autocrat, that kind of stuff. which autocrat would be the people who run an event. And running kitchen is part of events, and that's typically where you see a lot of, or at least traditionally, a lot of awards from the Rose category go through.
Yeah. So you'll have your households, which can vary. Fighting companies are specific to fighting, and I don't know that there's a fighting company specific to a type of game, right? It seems like
there's kind of like a fighting companies may have more of a goal oriented, but not necessarily a particular game. Like there's some kind of like tournament companies basically where they focus on individual fighting and tournament fighting. Kind of now, but not really at the same time. They want to pretend it's something else.
Right.
And then sometimes there's like battle game companies to a degree. There's just a bunch of friends who like to fight together kind of companies. There is you can go from spanning your kingdom companies to spanning just your Shire companies.
Yeah.
That used to be a thing more so than I think is now. Back whenever there was 3 parks in the greater Knoxville area, there was quite a few like localized companies, and it was actually kind of neat that way. It was friendly competition. Yeah, it wasn't just like North Triads and South Triads or something like that we see now. But it'd be like the Starlight Legion, which was like 4 or 5 people. There was oh man, I don't remember all of them. I can't remember the names of them now.
Maelstrom, Baganagas.
Yeah, I mean, kind of that's more localized too. Yeah, these are more modern comparatively to that. But we would compete in local stuff. Sometimes we would be like, oh, we'll do a battle game and we'll do Starlight Legion versus Maelstrom or something like that, and then people can fill in, or maybe even can form a third team as a quote unquote militia and go from there. These were just teams to fight together, essentially, rather.
Yeah, when there were different battle games happening, or
I mean, and this is kind of to the detriment of fighting companies in a way, because we try to pick even teams on a normal week to week basis. It makes it harder so that you can harder to fight with your friends, especially if you are a quote unquote the quote unquote best company in the area or whatever, right. Something like that, But households could be anything. We touched a little bit on service. They could be game making. They can be hanging out and playing Cube in the background. It really doesn't matter. Like the household's focus is what you choose it to be. So if you have like 2 like-minded individuals, you can form a household and do whatever you want.
Yeah. So the big difference is then, and this is something I did confirm. So households, just what you said, can be for anything. People who want to be associated, but they don't necessarily want to fight together. You can be in as many households as you want, generally speaking. Mm-hmm. Companies are pick one and you're there.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the big difference, and fighting companies are specific to fighting. I would add too, if you are a new player, there are going to be a lot of fighting companies that have the really cool garb and have the really cool people, and you want to be in those. And don't stress that too much. I know there was at least a local player on the RV boards who was like, I'm going to be a triad. And we're like, hey, buddy, calm down.
Yeah.
And it's not necessarily because you're not good enough. It's because they've never met you,
mm-hmm.
and they don't know you. So you're not going to get invited to those up front. Households are typically easier to get into, especially the service ones, because there's some people.
The minor advice for any of those really is just to hang out with the people that you like. And then usually, if that's the case, then it's usually a group of friends anyway.
Yeah.
Those are going to be different to some degree from place to place and company to company, but the general idea is it's a group of friends that are like-minded individuals.
Yep. And just because you're not in a company doesn't mean you're not friends.
Absolutely not.
It's a small portion of everybody's life. So
yeah,
I know you and I both know all of the North Knoxville triads. You were one at one point,
mm-hmm.
And neither of us are triads now. We're still friends. So.
Yeah, absolutely.
Your wife is a triad.
Yep.
Lexi. I gotta stop doing that.
I was seeing if you were gonna catch yourself with it or not.
No, I caught myself. So this jumps into Night Squire's pages, yeah?
Yeah, we can go there. I think that's a good way.
Yeah.
So I guess another organization of people in a way, is the knight, squire, pages, man-at-arms relationships. Knights have the white belts, and they are more or less masters in the area that they gain knighthood in. Mm-hmm. And from there, they can choose to take squires, pages, or man-at-arms. Man-at-arms and pages are technically the same thing. Traditionally, the ranking was lowest being page, man-at-arms being next, squire being the next, and then knight being on top. Other things that can take pages and sometimes man-at-arms, I don't remember for sure, are other titles. Yep. So something like duke. Or
specifically titles of nobility.
Yes.
So it can't be like you're Teflon the Awesome, you can take page.
Right.
But yeah, if you have
these are things granted to you by basically the kingdom. Yeah.
Yeah. And again, kingdoms each having their own different bylaws will have different ways that those are granted. Mm-hmm. Typically, a monarch can just dispense those at will, but you have to do something to earn it in most cases. And those awards in your Kingdom's Kapor will tell you how to earn them. So it's not just like the monarch spins a wheel and gives somebody a duke.
Well, I mean, they're more roughly outlined in the actual rulebook itself, and then sometimes more specifically in Kaporas of different kingdoms.
Yeah. So knights, like you mentioned, will have a white belt. They will usually have some coloration to them depending on the order of knighthood they have earned. So sword is silver, crown is gold, flame is red, and serpent is green.
Yep.
Page belts are usually yellow. I'm colorblind, so I'm looking at you.
Oh man, I'm just waiting.
Okay, and squire's belts are usually red.
Yeah.
And then man-at-arms belts are usually black with a silver stripe. You will see some that are green.
That is a holdover tradition kind of thing.
Yeah. So I got them and then lost them. Squire's belt. This is an upgrade from Flo, our knight, who...
We're squire buddies now.
We're squire buddies. We can get in fuckery. And then this is my old man-at-arms belt, which is green, because I like the tradition of the belt being green. Mm-hmm. And Flo has a gold stripe on his belt because it was crown.
Correct.
Others don't really wear a specific belt, so noble titles don't have a belt they wear. They can wear a crown.
Some kingdoms actually have it based on the rank of nobility, with the circlets to crowns and things like that. I think Northreach actually kind of has them denoted in some sort of way, but I can't remember for sure. And whoever it is that does, good on you, because it makes titles of nobility more substantial. That is something that we as a game could actually improve on, making the titles of nobility mean more than just a rubber stamp, basically.
Well, and if you look at them too, technically there are some titles of nobility that rank higher than knight in the grand schema of things.
Most of them, if I remember right. Actually.
But knight is the only title where you get something tangible in game.
Traditionally, yes. Again, some kingdoms actually give you... I think it was Northreach, but I'm not 100% sure. That when you got your lord or lady title, even, you would get gifts of the circlet or whatever their designator for it is.
Cool.
So it is something we can bring that kind of thing too very easily. For me, I've always that's another story, but I guess I'll mention it. But for me, like, to in game, like some kind of bonus to it, and I'm not talking like your class or something like that, but like a battle game happens and maybe it's a militia game, and if you have a noble title, then you get a point of armor for free or something silly like that,
okay.
Like to make it mean just a little bit.
That's kind of cool. I know the only thing that you are promised as anyone in Amtgard getting any kind of award is when you become a knight, you get your belt, you get your spurs, you get your tunic. Your tunic has your phoenix on it, which I think you pointed out was your personal
phoenix. Yeah.
Yeah. So every knight has a phoenix that is personal to them and their story. You can make up your own. I guess you can use a generic one, but that's lame.
Yeah.
So let's see. Spurs, belt, tunic, usually got a pillow to kneel on, and knights are also the only people in our game that can carry live steel swords. There are some traditions where squires can carry daggers, but I don't know if that still holds up in every kingdom.
I'm not 100% sure on that. I know that we kind of sort of look at it as okay. And I guess there's 2 other minor things that are a sometimes gift.
Okay.
The anti-paladin paladin, the Phoenix favor.
Yep.
And then the knighting box to put all your gifts in, basically. That's a thing that's in Neverwinter and Winter's Edge, so I don't know how many other kingdoms that carries over.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. So yeah, if you come to Park on your second day and you were carrying around a katana, nobody's going to jump your ass for it, but they might explain to you that that's reserved for... Oh, yes. They might explain to you that that's reserved for knights. And like Teflon pointed out, knights are also the only ones who can wear an unadorned chain, which is just a plain chainmail weave. If it has something on it, if it's got a big Flavor Flav clock, if it's got a big... who was it that had a big Michael Dorn head?
I don't remember.
That was a dorned chain.
Yeah, I can't remember.
Damn it. Well, anyway.
It makes me mad because it was really funny.
It seems like something Avi would do, but I don't think that's right.
Maybe? I don't remember. Yeah.
It had a big Commander Worf right on the chain. It was beautiful. So Knights get some special perks. They can also play 2 classes that currently, at the time of this recording, most of us can't play.
Yep.
They can play Paladin and Anti-Paladin, which you hinted at. They get a belt favor sometimes, which they can flip to determine their class. So Paladin and Anti-Paladin reserved for Knights. They're kind of... So Anti-Paladin seems kind of like a mix between...
We can brush that off to the classes structure.
Fair.
We'll keep on the awards and titles and stuff for right now.
Sure. So suffice it to say those classes are mismatches of other classes that aren't super great, to be really honest with you.
Yeah.
I'm looking at what they get. It's not as good as what some of the other classes get, but prestige
words
titles
mean something too.
Yeah, exactly. So currently you can't play those classes. There is a lot of people pushing to make it so that those classes are available to all. I know I've talked with a few knights who personally don't give a shit. So
there's a few that do.
Yeah, sentiment will vary place to place. So let's talk about awards, because this is how you get to
knighthood. Yeah.
How many awards are there? We standardized. So we used to have a ton. We standardized recently.
Well, technically standardization happened, I believe, 2007.
That's recently?
Sure, buddy.
Shut up.
We're not old.
Shut up.
But V7, I think, is what did it. I can't remember for sure. And it may have been slightly before, but I can't remember the actual action that caused standardization. But standardization just means that when you go to kingdom, you should get an award for roughly the same thing. Now, different cultures, it's going to be slightly different, and expectations may be higher or lower in different kingdoms. And honestly, that it should be fine, in my opinion. Yeah. I actually personally think that the standardization may be too much in some ways.
It kind of strips away a lot of the character.
Yeah. But there are 4 paths to knighthood, which we touched on as the different types, which is crown, flame, serpent, and sword. So as far as awards go that lead to it, sword has Orders of the Warrior, and these are earned through tournament participation and winning, basically.
You can also earn some of the lower ones for battlefield prowess.
Yes. But more, it's realistically at this time more built towards tournaments.
Yes, it absolutely is.
And then that is the only path to Knight of the Sword. So get good at fighting. Yep. Flame is the service-oriented belt, which has Smith, Rose, and I feel like I'm missing one randomly.
Lion?
Yes.
Yep.
Nah, the lion one doesn't need to be there. But
we'll
anyway,
explain these awards too once we get through this.
So Smiths are awards for doing things like presenting a class, teaching a class,
running battle games,
creating battle games. I believe it falls under there. Boy, if we had our rule book open, we could make this really easy instead of going off the
wiki. I was just letting you waffle.
Fair.
Hold on. I can tell you exactly what it's for.
Roses is for service, and service is a kind of big, broad term.
It's the catch-all for sure.
Yeah, it is a catch-all kind of award in some ways, which doesn't take away from what the award is and should not take away from what the award is. No one should be devaluing that in any way, shape, or form.
God, no.
It can be getting like your first award that's listed usually as like picking up trash on a park day or something like that. Yep. To masterhood is like autocrating big events basically. Yeah. Some people have done it through so masterhood also is a kind of 11th award currently, in my opinion anyway. Yeah. That you have got your what we call box tops colloquially. Yeah. So getting you progress through the orders 1 through 10, and then masterhood and then knighthood is how it's kind of separated. So that's quote unquote 12 awards if you want to look at it that way. And again, low level awards 1 through 3 are kind of Shire level work. This is a general.
Right, depending on where you're from, your group might be able to give higher or lower level awards depending on how it's structured.
Yeah, and then 4 and 5 is baronial. 6 and 7 is duchy. I don't personally know what grand duchies. I think that's again, they're not exactly a thing, but they are a thing. But I think they can go up to 9 sometimes. 9. And then kingdoms have to give 10 and masterhood and knighthood at the kingdom level.
Yep. No one can make a knight except for the current monarch of your kingdom. Yep. You cannot collect enough box tops that you are just default given the award. If you shoot up there to 10 and then get your masterhood real quick, you may be waiting in line behind all the other people who got there before you who are waiting to be knighted as well. So don't get your masterhood and then sit there going, it's my turn. Where's my stuff? Where's my belt? Where's my spurs?
Yeah.
Stuff takes time to make. It's expensive. And also
just
there's
as a
other people.
General thing, what is it, like 7 or 8 years is the general,
seems
7
right.
to 10, something like that, for the general check of 1 to 10 in knighthood, basically. Yeah. So this is a dedicated player kind of thing.
Dedicated or extremely talented. A lot of people get it quicker, and one's not better than the other. Yeah. Anyway. So yeah, just know that it takes a lot of effort to get a belt in any of these categories, and it's a ton of work. So real quick, I'm going to touch on what Smith is because it's kind of ill-defined. Awarded for organizing and running battle games, quests, workshops, demonstrations, and the like while not in office, or for running such events above and beyond the requirements of one's office. So it's kind of broad. Yeah,
it's another broad one, and I think it's actually an under-awarded one. Yep. Like a personal goal for me is to eventually get to Master Smith there through, I guess, multiple channels, to be honest, personally. But
we've gotten Smiths for doing this podcast.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, specifically teaching how to do a podcast. So it was a demonstration, effectively.
At Coronation, I think.
I don't remember which event it was. Yeah, it's on YouTube, so go listen to that. Yeah. And again, it's a broad term, so there's going to be some wiggle room in it, and your Kingdom's Corpora may or may not address more specifically into that as well. Rose was the other one. No, we hit Rose, basically.
Rose is kind of a catch-all for service, and like you said, it can be anything from picking up trash to autocrating huge events. Lion is, and we'll talk about this more, but Lion doesn't feel like it should be here because Lion is specifically for leadership and going above and beyond the call of duty of execution in an office, or for leadership outside of office while performing a service to Amtgard. So
right.
It's a little half and half between
crown.
A rose and a crown.
Yeah.
So let's actually talk about crowns. Crowns are, I think, the only way to become a crown knight.
Correct. It used to be crown points, and that was kind of an abysmal system. I will shout out Neverwinter. I liked whenever they awarded a title, it means it was a check mark for you got your crown points for that position you were in. So that made the noble titles mean something a little bit there as well. But now we have got it to in my opinion, a better structure, a 1 through 10 award as well, called the Crown Award, and that is for serving in office to local monarchy for lower and kingdom monarchy for higher. Yep. And this one is a special one in that you can get awarded multiple orders with one service term.
Yeah. Depending on the position, you can serve multiple terms in a row. Some of them are kind of higher up, and so they give more per, I guess, term.
Yeah.
Just depending on where you're at.
We are kind of at this point we are new to that system, and we are, I wouldn't say monkeying with it, but we're feeling out what our traditions in each kingdom for each ladder award on the crown path is. But in general, to get a masterhood, you will probably have to do kingdom office. And in most places, it's likely that you are going to be wanted to hold the shiny hat of monarch of the kingdom.
It's a trap. It's a trap. Run.
Anyway.
But this is the reason why I personally think Lion should be under the crown path, because it is a leadership thing. Crown is a leadership thing, so they make sense to me. But
and Lion also incentivizes leadership when you're not in
office. Yeah.
Like,
which,
hey,
again, I feel is
hat.
very similar.
Absolutely.
Then you have Serpent.
So Serpent contains our last 3 of the standardized awards. So that's Owl, Dragon, Garber. And each of those is for a different crafting thing.
Crafting medium, sort of, but it's not exactly the correct definition, because Dragon is the catch-all for this particular one. I don't like to really say catch-all because it's not. It seems negative, but that's not really it. It's just that
there has to be a spot to award things where there's not a specifically defined.
Right. Yeah. The subjectivity is actually really nice. Yeah. It is a positive thing, in my opinion.
Right. So Owl, and all of these ladders separately. So if you get your first order of the Owl and then you get a Garber, you do not get your second order of the Garber. They are 3 separate paths to the same belt.
Good call, because that was taken for granted.
Yeah, absolutely. So Owls are for, we say, construction, specifically weapons, armor, that kind of thing. So if you see somebody with a really cool flat blade, or if you see somebody with a really nice plasti dipped sword, that's a recommendation for an Owl. And then you have Garber, which is exactly what it sounds like. It's for making garb.
Which garb is effectively the costume that you would wear to a LARP.
Yeah, you see people wearing tunics. This belt is garb.
Some might quibble over it being garb to garb accessory, but whatever.
The tunics, though, the pants, the cloaks, all the crazy sashes, a lot of those things are considered garb, depending on your local interpretation, of course. And then Dragon, like you said, kind of the catch-all. I mean, it's so I'll read it off here because it's a lot. Awarded for demonstrating ability in the arts of Amtgard, performance, painting, sculpting, photography, cooking, banners, artistically focused garb, because that's different. Writing, acting, role-playing, etc.
Let me emphasize one of those real quick, called role-playing, that I got an award for, but it never really gets awarded for.
Yeah, and this is where the award standardization changed things. There used to be an Order of the Mask, which some
kingdoms still have
it. But that is also roleplay. But it all gets folded into this one path now. So to sort of recap, under award standardization, I can guarantee these awards will be in your kingdom. That's Order of the Crown, which leads the only path to Crown Belt. There's Order of the Warrior, which is only path to Sword Belt. Then there's Rose Smith Lion, which is your path to Flame Belt, and Owl Dragon Garber, which is your path to Serpent Belt.
And there are, like we touched on just a second ago, there are non-standard awards. Each kingdom, this will probably be in your corpora. Like Mask is one that was given before standardization to role-playing type things. Jovius was an award that was, I don't remember exactly the quote-unquote definition that it had, but it's basically being a cool dude in a way, I think.
Outstanding attitude, that's all it says.
Yeah.
Being a cool dude.
Yeah. Some kingdoms have, if you get enough of those, you could be a master thespian. Which isn't recognized in any way, shape, or form across all of Amtgard. That is a kingdom-specific kind of thing.
So one of our first guests was a master thespian, Saint O'Banion. He is, I think, the only person to be knighted for that.
As far as I know,
there's probably someone else, but the only person I know of, and the only person that's been on this show.
Yeah.
So if you're a master thespian, get at us. There's others too, like Order of the Zodiac, and then there's like Order of the Walker in the Middle, which is Paragon Reeve. I guess.
Well, so that's like a in the weeds kind of conversation, to be honest.
Yeah.
There used to be, what was it, like Order of the Web, back when web design was a thing, or Spider or something like that. Yeah, it was really bad because it was whenever, in the 90s, all the .com boom and stuff going on and stuff. So we kind of adapted an award directly for that, but it didn't get standardized.
I asked Jeeves what to give you, and it said this.
Yeah, right. So it could be anything. We gave Order of the Awesome during the pandemic for being cool people hosting things for the kingdom to continue to be a community while we couldn't meet in person and things like that.
Well, actually, I hit on something there that I think makes the perfect segue to our next topic. Do we want to talk about Paragon really quickly?
Oh, yeah, because that was technically a title, I think. I can't remember how it's
technically a title, and it spreads over into combat, which is our next bullet point.
Yeah,
so
it's perfect.
Paragon is, and I'm not a Paragon, so I'm going to tell you what it is badly. Paragon's when you're real good at a class, and they decide to make you really good at it with a title.
More or less, to be honest. Yeah. This is one that isn't exactly standardized. Many kingdoms require it to be a kingdom level award, while others don't have it defined as such.
Yep.
There are some kingdoms that don't require level 6 in the class, whereas others do. And so this is where it kind of gets into the weeds just slightly, but it is effectively a do you have the wiki pulled up? Because there is a blurb that actually describes it really well, and I don't want to shortchange it really.
I was taking a fat rip off of this vase, but yeah. Let's see, Paragon, referred to as Paragon after the official adoption of the V8 rules of play. It's an award given to a player for consistently being an excellent example of their class in battle games. A player should look like, roleplay like, and be highly effective at playing their class to be bestowed a Paragon title for that class. A Paragon should take the lead in teaching new players how to play their class, assist them with getting the necessary equipment, etc. A player may receive multiple Paragon awards, one for each class. The reserve symbol of a Paragon is a sash in the color of their class with a silver trim.
In Winter's Edge, we kind of do it big for Paragons. We gift them a scroll of the title as well as a sash with the silver trim on it.
Yeah.
And they have a minor thing similar to Pages that is called Apprentices, and it's basically another quote-unquote buddy system, but through specifically the class battle gaming.
More of a Sith rule of two kind of thing.
Yeah, kind of, right? And that's not defined. Just a touchback definition of how many pages and man-at-arms and squires you have is based on your kingdom traditions and corpora even sometimes. So if you're interested in those, honestly, just ask the people who have those colored belts about them in
like
your kingdom.
In Winter's Edge, there's no limit to the number of pages you can have. So if any of you viewers want a page belt, mail $49.99 to... No, I'm just kidding. I'm not making that many belts.
Well, I mean, with $49, you can just have someone else make it and see if they can get an award for it, and then keep the whole thing churning,
it's an
man.
Awards mill. There we go. God in heaven. Oh, by the way, Amtwiki does list Walker in the Middle as Paragon Reeve, so suck it.
Yeah,
the wiki says it.
I know. Yeah, it's it's a distinction that I think is important, but I may be just in semantics and in the weeds for it. But
so yeah, you can. There is also potentially a Paragon color now.
Yep. There actually are a couple. I don't think there's very many currently. Of course, Paragon Color and stuff was making its waves right before the pandemic. So
it's only just now making its way downtown.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway. So, anyway, these are for being really good at that particular thing. You may have heard Sir Michael mention, what did he call them? Alka-Seltzer crunching barbarians. So they would be foaming at the mouth on the field. Like that is a Paragon barbarian, right? People who get really into it, who are great at role-playing their characters and are really good at playing those characters become Paragons. Mm-hmm. Currently, Paragon is just an end. It doesn't really level in anything. There are some talks of making a belt using Paragon status. I don't know how I feel about that. But like we said, there's also Paragon status for non-combat, which is that Paragon color in some kingdoms. Mm-hmm. Scrolls. I mentioned scrolls. You get scrolls for a lot of stuff. Noble titles, knighthoods, they get scrolls as well.
Yeah. And the scroll is usually something along the lines of I, monarch of whatever kingdom, grant the title of blah, blah, blah to Cabbage. And on this date, let it be known, or something like that. There's usually some pomp and circumstance to it.
Yeah.
And I always feel like they should be bigger things, but I don't know how to make that happen. That's a cultural kingdom thing.
Well, I know one of the things that Vidalia has gotten up to her 9th dragon for is scroll work. So right now, if you want to get a scroll and you want to make it a bigger part of your kingdom, you mail $49.99 to Vidalia.
Yeah.
Is that your going rate?
Yeah, sure.
Yo, man,
That sounds like a plan.
higher? Go up.
$100.
$59.99? $100?
Going once.
Do I get $59.99? Anything? I can't be an auctioneer. Just, I don't know, hit up Vidalia. Or somebody who is talented in your own kingdom, and maybe let Vidalia get some damn sleep.
Nah.
So
She doesn't want it.
Okay, so Paragon, typically awarded through battle games. What is a battle game?
So this is a thing that when I was talking with people on the Paragon chat with Merrick about, that I never really thought about it in this way, but traditionally, when I heard battle game, that meant a class game, which is playing the classes of Amtgard, and we'll go over each class briefly soonish.
It's at the end here.
Yeah. But ditch battles, which is a specific set of rules, basically, and militia battles is a specific set of rules, are all considered battle games as well, according to the rulebook with the way it's written.
Okay.
So there can be kind of a wide variety of what you call a battle game. These things can
let's
be...
break it down.
Yeah, I was going to say, these things can be something as simple as capture the flag, but using the Amtgard rules. And any of the three that I mentioned before, to use some sort of weird scenario battle where you have to capture the castle and save the queen and kill the spiky shelled turtle guy. That's a boss, right?
Yeah, and you grab the boss by his tail and swing him around the stage and throw him at bombs strategically placed at 8 points off the stage. Okay, cool.
Yep, totally.
Fuck.
I was going to go with grab the axe, but...
Oh, yeah, okay. Well, that's a generational difference.
Yeah, isn't it? Yeah.
Oh, God. Yeah, so those battles can be class battles, where you will be playing in a full class regalia with all of your spells and abilities.
Let's back up a second. So
sorry.
ditch battle games is kind of a colloquial term. Usually, this is two lines of fighters fighting each other, and we only use the hit system with the weapons, and the weapon classes don't really mean anything. So you can use whatever weapon combination that you want.
Except bows and armor.
Correct. Bows, projectiles, melee specifically, weapons. Militia would be a broader term as far as the equipment you can use. You can then now use the projectile weapons and throwaways and things like that, as well as armor. And then class battles becomes the even broader sense, but restricted in individual pieces.
Yeah. So typically your park, if this is your first day or your second day showing up, your park is going to start warming up by ditching. A ditch almost forms naturally. Amtgarders will start fighting. A few more will walk up. You'll do, win or loser. And then eventually you'll have, 4 people, and then 6 people, and you decide, hey, let's just make 2 lines and fight. So a ditch is the most common thing that's going to happen at Amtgard. It's also where a lot of parks can stall out, I feel like, because it's easy to do a ditch and it's, hard to set up a class game.
Yep.
So a ditch is going to be what you do to warm up. It's going to, if you saw people at your park this past weekend, and there were 2 lines of people running at each other, that's probably a ditch. Militia can be that. And it can factor in bows and armor.
Militia is whenever we start using objectives, typically.
Right. I was going to say militia games usually turn into something more complex. So Siege the Castle can be just militia, although that's kind of boring for our game.
Right.
But, capture the flag, ding the bell, general battle, whatever. Those things can be militia as well. And that sort of is what delineates a militia from a ditch and the armor and bows. And then class battles are... I've never seen a ditch class battle. That would be cool.
It's happened a couple times, but it's not a typical thing.
It's just Phoenix League with more steps, it sounds like.
Less steps, actually.
Yeah, fair. We'll talk about Phoenix League, too. But yeah, so class battles are essentially that last extreme that we just talked about for militia battles, but with your classes. And class battles can be like a one-off. Like a capture the flag or a capture the castle or a ding the bell. They can also be weekend-long events depending on who's organizing things. You can even have, your park may have a consistent storyline. So, hey, you killed the grue, and now you've got to take its bones to kill the bigger grue or whatever.
Save your lemming.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, didn't we have that when we did the bunch of games with the penguin, kind of?
Well, not exactly.
Okay.
That was more of a callback to Promethea.
Okay. Yeah, that's fair. So class games are usually going to be more involved. They're going to let you get truly into your character and wear all the stuff that you've been making and really get into it. That's also where all the magic's going to come out.
The whole like 80% of our rulebook.
Yeah, the biggest portion of our rulebook is reserved for that, and it only comes out in this one play type. Well, that's not true. So there are also competitive formats. Mm-hmm. So there are tournaments, and we'll briefly touch on those because those are always going to be militia. Well, no, those are always going to be ditch mostly.
Most of the time, they'll fall under kind of the quote unquote ditch rules.
Yeah. There are sometimes bows, but that's
it just depends on the tournament. It's a little more defined by the tournament rather than the type of battle game because they're not really a battle game because it's a one-on-one thing.
Yeah. Tournaments will vary just depending on how they're being run. They can be NBA Final Four style brackets where all the participants are known and the matchups are defined. They can be what we call a bear pit. Mm-hmm. Or multiple pits where you have a line and then everybody funnels into that line. The winner stays. It just depends. Talk with whoever's setting up the tournament to get more familiar with the rules. But in general, I'm hoping everyone listening that has found this video somehow knows what a tournament is, broadly speaking.
We don't typically do Swiss. They're more, or round robins even.
Yeah.
They're more closer related to the NBA Final Four kind of brackets and stuff like that.
Yeah. Just depending on, that's harder to set up.
Yeah.
If you just want to say, hey, we're having a tournament, get in the pit, go. Mm-hmm. That can happen. There are also competitive games, so jugging.
Yep.
I talk about all the time on this podcast. Jugging is a game within a game, so it's Amtgard, but with different rules. There are defined positions for every player. There are 5 players on each team. You can have a person on the bench. There is a defined boundary. If you step out of it, you are stunned. There are certain rules for stuns and pins. If you get killed,
there's some regional rules on some of this too.
Yeah, there are regional rules, and then there are traditional versus non-traditional rules. Like, does your chain have 2 flails or flail sword?
Yeah.
And can your chain pin if they have flail sword?
Right.
So again, check with the local organizer, but jugging is, I've always heard it called like Amtgard's hockey.
Yeah.
Just any, it is.
I think that's a pretty apt description.
It can get that way. No high sticking, please. But it is a hockey-like format. You have a goal and you have an objective to get onto that goal, and there are different positions that each do different things. And then the other thing I have written down here is Phoenix League. Mm-hmm. Now, I've never played Phoenix League, so you
actually have just a kind of dumbed-down version that I brought to the park.
That's the only kind I know.
Yeah. It also has a defined framework on how the board is laid out, I guess the terrain, whatever you want to call it. Mm-hmm. And then while there isn't exactly positions, there are 4 active players and 2 people on a bench. And that's like, this is kind of into the weeds for this particular thing a little bit, but the bench players can then become active when an active player dies, and then you have your death count and goes from there. But more specifically, I guess that's more new player oriented, would be what are the classes?
Yeah, so this is the difference between Phoenix League and jugging, besides a lot of things, is that Phoenix League is class based. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, that's kind of why I wanted to get to classes. Hold on. Okay, so I'm gonna rattle off a list of all the classes, then we can talk about them in brief. Going in alphabetical order, because that's how the Amped Wiki puts them. Anti-Paladin, which you can't play. Archer, Assassin, Barbarian, Bard, Druid, Healer, Monk, Monster, Paladin, which you also can't play. Scout, Warrior, Wizard. Now,
Monster, you're probably not going to be playing either.
Yeah, Monster is a specific thing. Now, there's also a few others. There's Peasant.
That's not really a class.
Well, if you are a new player playing Amtgard, and you've been playing for a while and you still don't have Garb, you may get suckered into this class. And we'll talk about it.
It's a penalty, not a class.
It really is. And then there's also Color, which is a class.
Yes.
So we can sort of talk about them. Do we want to start at the top of the list with Anti-Paladin, or do we want to do Archer first? And then
just run it down the list again for me. Like, introduce the name, and I'll give a quick thing.
Rapid fire, lightning round. I like it. Yeah. Anti-Paladin.
So they're kind of like a Death Knight if you're into WoW and stuff like this. And D&D, it's kind of still the same Anti-Paladin or Dark Knight, whatever kind of atmosphere to it.
Yep.
Aesthetic, rather.
You have to be a knight to play one. You do get the ability to have like an undead minion. I think they're like a mix of barbarian and assassin.
Kind of, yeah. And a little bit of healer because of necromantic magic.
Yeah.
Their signifier is a black phoenix. And the signifiers of most other classes, except for paladin, is a sash.
Yep.
So archer, I think, is next,
Yep,
right?
Archer's next.
So archer wears an orange sash and is kind of like a control caster in a way, except instead of using magic, they use different types of specialty arrows. They can have things from a poison arrow, which will kill you on a singular wound, a destruction arrow that will destroy a shield or parts of armor that gets hit, pinning arrow, which will make the player stopped, which is...
Even if it hits a shield?
Yeah. Which makes it to where you can't move your feet, but you can continue to fight.
Yeah.
And so by placing well-placed shots with the archer, you can kind of control the battlefield there.
Yeah, and Archer also really dependent on like your loadout and what you bring with you.
Yeah.
And using the right arrow in the right situation. You're getting chased down, that destruction arrow is probably not that good. That
Right.
pinning arrow, fucking fantastic.
Yeah.
So next up is Assassin.
Yep. So assassins are really good about phasing in and out of play effectively, at least from a new player perspective. They have access to poison, so that is also another one-hit kill kind of aspect.
Dragged below.
No, they have coup de grace.
Yeah, sorry. They're the same kind of shit.
Sort of. I'm not going to get super in the weeds for it.
Anyway.
But they are the typical rogues, assassins, that kind of idea and aesthetic. They have a black sash for their signifier. Sashes in general go from one shoulder to a hip and worn by players in class games to signify what class they're playing.
So you know what you're fighting against when it walks up to you.
We are trying to be an open information game.
Yeah.
And they also play in the state of insubstantial, which is really complicated to explain to a new player.
You're a ghost.
Yeah, basically you're phased in and out of ability to interact with.
This is your Naruto replace yourself with a log.
Sure.
But yeah, there's no log. Okay, Assassin, Barbarian.
Barbarians are very much that.
Barbarian.
Yeah, they have skills that go off of what we call wound and kill triggers, which means if I'm fighting Cabbage as a barbarian and I wound him, then I can use an ability. Man, I can't remember the ability. No, adrenaline is a kill trigger. Blood and Thunder is the wound trigger, and it gives you a kind of a point of, oops, I got hit, but I'm fine.
Yeah, the thrill of battle is what keeps you going. Their sash is
white. Yeah.
They also get fight after death, which means once you've died, you get to
unfortunately
be dangerous for 7 seconds.
No, you cannot incur any more wounds than the wound that killed you. So if you were legged or armed, you maintain that and then count down up to 7, whichever way you want to do it. And you cannot take any more wounds, so you just are kind of a carte blanche, just able to try and kill people as you wish for 7 seconds.
Yep. Bard, the best class.
It is a good one. Bards have a blue sash. We should really have a format for saying classes and stuff, but you know what? They are the first of the magic classes that we were going to touch on. Magic classes have a kind of point buy system for their spell points. You get 5 spell points per level, and you can spend points at a lower level from a higher set of
This is
points.
where the game does become like D&D.
Yeah, you
can buy 5th level magic, or below with your 5th level spell slots.
Right. Well, yeah, that'll work. Good enough. I'm trying not to get way in the weeds because this is like my section to do that in. But bards are kind of they use the command spell school a lot. And Hi, Brad. You're distracting.
It's so distracting. Get out of here, Brad.
But they do things like stay away from me, or pay attention to me, or move away from me, move away from your friends. These are the kind of things that the magic that they use typically does.
Yeah.
There's some other specific things. They also are famous for their songs, which is like an enchantment that they chant, actually physically chant.
Think Paladin auras from World of Warcraft.
Yeah, that's
They give
pretty
you different
accurate.
effects. They're a support class, broadly defined.
Yeah.
They're not going to go in and 1v10 people, but they can make their 5 people as good as your 10 people.
Yeah. Sort of. Yeah. Again, I'm going to try and be general with these things. So these are kind of at the hip, non-super technical answers to these things. So
yeah. Bard feels a lot like Blue Mage.
yeah.
In that it sort of has a little bit of everything, but it's not got the best of everything. Mm-hmm. So Bard doesn't get a fireball, for example.
Right.
But they do get a shove, and that's pretty cool. Next up is color.
Color is kind of the people who don't physically play in the battle game, but still contribute to the atmosphere of the game. So these are people typically who are in garb and are on the sidelines, either helping in the battle game or just chilling out, playing cube or horseshoes or other things on the outside.
Yeah. If you've walked up to your park and you see a whole group of people running a vendor stand and people playing games in the background and hanging out on blankets, those are color. And it makes the game look cooler just by them existing. They don't necessarily have to be in the game, although they can be NPCs. Yep. But they are, and that is why they're called that. They provide color to the game. Mm-hmm. Next is Druid, which is your thing.
Yeah, so I'm trying not to go. Druid does everything in this current set of the rules, but to be specific, these are the kind of nature lover magic class type things. They are usually enchantment heavy, so that means I put what's called a spell strip on someone else, sometimes on me, that grants abilities specific to that enchantment.
Yeah, Barkskin.
So that like Barkskin can add armor. There are gift of air, fire, and earth that kind of grant some sort of protection and a spell that you can cast that you don't have access to typically.
Yeah.
And immunities. There's all kinds of random things that happen. Enchantments are one of the broadest areas that are in the game. You can only technically have one enchantment on you, except for the exceptions that are randomly throughout the game.
Yeah.
I think that really kind of sums up Druid, because it does everything right now, and it's really not kind of a problem as a class because of balance reasons.
It's hyper flexible. A Druid can have a bow if they want. They can have sword and board if they want.
Yep.
There's really no limitation, and they also get magic on top of that. Next up is Healer.
Druid.
Sash color is
Sash color is brown, yes.
Okay. Healer, sash color is red?
Red,
okay.
Yeah. Healer is pretty much as you hear it. You know, these would be the clerics without the armor for D&D. No, bards can get armor in their spells. Healers cannot. But they have some enchantments of their own. These are things that are typically protective in nature. So something like Imbue Shield, which makes your shield kind of impervious to certain effects. Sorry guys, I'm trying not to get way in the weeds with this. They can resurrect people, they heal people. So if I hit Cabbage in the leg, then if Vidal is playing healer, she can cast heal on him and he can stand back up. And things like that.
Yeah. Healer is also another support class that, broadly speaking, is going to support their teammates. They do get some offensive magic.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
But they have, like, entangles, which I think are bigger than, a bigger part of their kit than the raw offensive magic.
Yeah.
Monk.
Monk is a problem.
No. You need to take half of Druid stuff and give it to Monk.
No, Monk is a gray sash. And they are, monk kind of, if you think like Shaolin monks or something along those lines of like fighting warrior who's supposed to be kind of devout to their leanings or whatever, is kind of the aesthetic that people bring to it.
Yep.
And they're immune to magic that is casted at them, targeting them specifically.
but not ball magic.
Right. Within 20 feet,
Now
if
they
I recall.
Louisville Slugger those some bitches at higher levels.
At higher levels, they gain. They're basically the anti-magic class, even though that's not really where they fit. But that's technical junk. But yeah, so they're the kind of quote unquote anti-magic class. There are very few spells that affect them and their gear, so they are usually more apt to trying to fight the magic classes because they typically don't have armor. And monks do not have access to armor, and they have access to a fair amount of weaponry. They don't get shields, is their kind of big thing.
No shields, no range, no projectiles of any kind.
No, they have access to heavy thrown.
Yeah, heavy thrown. But yeah, so their limitations really are with armor specifically. And and they don't have a lot of abilities that give them much else. Which
this kind of review makes it sound kind of negative. Monks aren't necessarily bad per se. It's kind of where the other classes
I want Monk to be better, so I have a reason to play it. Monster.
So Monster is a special thing that only your game designer or monarch, as in like monarch of your shire or whatever, can kind of give you a special permission to play.
Yeah.
And there are lots of different resources for monsters to, like the door on Avatar has like lists of monsters that are divided up by level that you could play. However, as a game designer, I can say, hey, Cabbage, you want to play this vampire?
No.
Don't look. Yeah, don't look at the door because that's not the abilities you have. It is a very specialized class. Their class sash would be silver, and whatever garb makes them look like the monster they are portraying.
That's the big part. So yeah, I'm a vampire. I need presumably something that makes me look like a vampire.
Glitter, right?
Glitter, yeah. Big cape, big fangs, something like that.
Counting.
No. So Paladin would be next, and this is just the opposite of Paladin.
Yeah, Paladins more or less are the clerics of our game.
Yeah, they're the clerics that get to wear the armor.
Yeah, they have armor and they have some protective ability type things. I can't remember if they heal anymore or not. So yeah, but you guys as new players can't play it, unfortunately. So we can go ahead and skim past that one, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. They can heal. Yes. Sorry, I wanted to look that up because I was sure that they could. And then I doubted myself. Peasant. We talked about this as a punishment.
So peasant is a penalty. If you're out and you're no longer quote unquote new, then when you play in a class game, if you do not have a sash, you are relegated to playing peasant, which peasant has a lot of restrictions. You can only have one short weapon, and that is it, I think.
So this isn't a threat to any new players listening to this. You know, we're not going to slap you with peasant as because we don't like you. If you have been showing up for a long time,
you will acquire gear of some sort, at least a sash, basically.
Yeah, people will eventually throw stuff at you, mostly. But if you've been showing up for a while, and this depends on where you're from and the particular group you're with, I think typically 4 weeks is kind of standard.
That's been our standard.
Yeah, 4 weeks. If you don't have anything, when the next class game starts up, hey, you're a peasant. Sorry, bud. By that point, you should have at least some garb to wear, and a sash can be
I wouldn't
provided.
say necessarily garb in 4 weeks, but the sash is really the big thing to participate in the battle games because, again, we're an open information game, so people need to know what immunities or what to expect from your class and things like that.
Yeah, and you can't just be running around like Barry Blue Jeans with just a whole kit, a pole arm and whatever else. We don't know what to make of you. For all my Adventure Zone listeners, you're welcome. Next up is Scout, and we're going to kind of talk about this like we do Monk, I feel like.
Yeah, kind of. Their sash is green. They are kind of the skirmisher class is what they kind of sort of get relegated into. They have an okay amount of armor they can get. They have a wide variety of weapons that they can get. They can't get pole arms, though. And then their abilities are kind of limited. They have a mend that they can use, I think.
Yeah, mend is like healing for armor.
They have a step in the shadows, which is a phase in and out of play kind of deal. They have a unique ability called tracking, which brings people out of insubstantial. So they phase people back in against their will, basically.
Anti-assassin.
Yeah. So that's kind of where they play. So if you think of like Rangers from D&D or Hunters kind of from WoW, that kind of stuff, that's usually the aesthetic that you're looking at there.
Yeah. And their sash is green.
Correct.
Which is the one I always fuck up.
Go colorblind.
Yeah, so where assassin jumps in and out of combat to be lethal, and they're very glass cannonish. The idea with scout is that they jump in and out of combat for survivability, and they can hang around a little longer. Next up, the classic, everyone knows it, everyone loves it, warrior.
Yeah, so warrior, I honestly caution new people not to play warrior or monk.
Barbarian's better.
For new people, maybe.
Yes.
Because monk makes it to where you ignore a lot of the game, and it's harder to learn the game when you ignore half of it. And warrior, because of its abilities, are very...
Purple sash.
Yeah, purple sash. Very oriented towards armor, and armor is usually an expensive thing or a very time-consuming thing. So a lot of people are like, oh, just play warrior because it's simple, which it is simple, but you're not going to be near as effective as you would be as a barbarian or something like that starting out.
Yeah. Warriors can use any melee weapon and no range of any kind, I believe.
Javelins.
They get javelins exclusively.
Which is not a great ranged weapon. But some people can use them okay, but they're really overall not great.
And yeah, a lot of their stuff centers around breaking crowd control, staying alive super long, and around incentivizing the armor that you definitely will have when you're playing warrior.
Should have.
Right.
Anyway. Yes.
You have armor, right?
You have armor when you play warrior, please.
You have armor, right? Did you bring your plate mail? Anyway, last but not least is wizard.
So wizard is the quintessential wizard that you hear about. Fireballs, lightning bolt, fireballs, lightning bolts, spells that kill you immediately when they yell at you, make people drop weapons, or not use weapons, I guess, is more accurate.
Yeah.
Things like that. They yell at you, they throw fireballs at you, and that kind of thing.
Yeah. They have...
Yellow sash.
Yeah, yellow sash. They have an enormous pool of magic. A wizard is pretty flexible in what it can be, although very often it's that glass cannon offensive.
Yeah, they do have access to some enchantments, and those enchantments are kind of offensive oriented, but they are very few.
Yeah, and wizards can take weapons, but it costs them.
All of the magic classes can take weapons, but it costs spell points to do that. So you are kind of limiting yourself on magic for sustainability of having a weapon, kind of.
Yeah, and I think the most a wizard can carry is a single sword?
No, they can buy multiple.
Hold on. Weapon.
They have access to short weapons, I believe, at first level, so you could buy 2 short weapons.
No, equipment, weapon, short, cost 2, max 1.
Oh,
yeah,
so they did change it.
Yeah, single sword, no shield, no armor. So you are very vulnerable as a wizard. It helps to play with your team. That said, a wizard played correctly can do a lot of shit. And these are your Gandalfs, your Merlins, your whatever.
Yeah.
Wizard, a lot of fun. Probably the biggest, the
Big
highest,
blasty.
the steepest learning curve, I would guess, for
magic classes in general are kind of a steep learning curve to be the most effective.
I still don't get how Swifter Charge works. I just play a bard and take a ton of shots. Don't tell anybody. Anyway, so yeah, that's going to broadly cover our game types, our classes, awards, social structures. Is there anything else that we missed? And this is the miscellaneous section that I have here.
Amtgard as a whole, when we talk about it as what is Amtgard in a way, is a lot more than just the game. Like, we went over like the different kind of community things that the awards and stuff kind of play to, but like in general, like I've been playing Amtgard almost 20 years. God, it's so close. Ugh. But the reason why, and I took a break personally for like 3 or 5 years or what, I don't remember exactly. I think it's 3 years, but so the big thing that keeps me coming out is kind of the game in and of itself, just because of the kind of person I am. but the main thing is the friendship and the things that you do and interact with the community as a whole. That is really the big seller. That is such an undervalued thing in our game.
Yeah, the community is huge. There are a lot of people who, and this I realize this a lot at Pat's Knighting, but there are a lot of people who I considered not necessarily out of the game, but just kind of like done with the game.
Yeah.
And they still have a deep level of concern for everything that happens inside of it.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's a retention thing that I think is hard to place a value on, but it's pretty huge.
Yeah, sometimes when we're playing games on the WAK Discord, we play with a guy named Zoltan, and Zoltan's from Florida. And
shout out Zoltan.
Yeah. And he hadn't played for a very long time, and actually came out to Stinkfoot's Knighting because of a show of friendship, basically. And so, like, I don't know, he's been at like 5+ years, I think. Yeah. And that's 5+ years separated from a fantasy game that he decided to go.
Still turns up to see his friend get a
major award.
Yeah, absolutely. I can't think of anything else. I think we're at about the right amount of time. You want to cut it?
Yeah, man, let's cut it.
Beautiful. Hey, everyone. Thanks for listening. If you liked what you heard, be sure to subscribe to our podcast on YouTube or Spotify to get notified about new episodes. And make sure to follow us on Facebook for announcements and more.